This episode of the Quad Squad Pod is sponsored by The Ballad of Bonaduke by R.T. Slaywood, a dark urban fantasy available exclusively on Kindle Vella. Visit our link tree or the description of this episode of the podcast for more information on how to begin reading today. Now let's start the show. Gentlemen, we are here. It's episode 3, and I tell you what, it has been a motherfucker trying to take care of this episode.
This is technically episode 3.5, maybe.
Yeah. I think you could all cut away to images of us longingly gazing off into the distance, wondering if we're going to get this episode recorded, but I'm going to knock on wood because we're here and we're going to get this done for everybody.
I do like how you kept the same shirt on, even though it's the next day. Like, that's nice. Well, I should have done that.
Same.
This is the whole...
Oh, I have a different hoodie on. Yeah.
To be fair, I took it off after we recorded. I was excited to wear my Prince Purple Rain shirt that I got for $8 at TJ Maxx, but
nice.
Pauly's really trying to spoil the magic.
Well, in his defense, I did too. I wore the same shirt thinking I was right, but now I'm looking and I had a different hoodie on, so it's already ruined.
It is ruined. I went from Star Wars to Beetlejuice,
but nice Prince shirt.
I've subsequently showered and I did not sleep in this shirt. I can't speak for everybody else here, but anyways,
I'm calling bullshit on the shower.
Pauly, why don't you take it away?
What are we talking about today?
Us, obviously.
Yes.
Okay, so we've all had some people come to us and be like, hey, like, I know you personally from the squad, but I really don't know anybody else that well. So today we're going to talk a little bit about our backgrounds, kind of what we have, where we've come from, how we got to the point we're at, basically. So yeah, that's the simple way of putting it. And I think Andrew is going to lead us off today.
Yeah, we asked Aaron if he wanted to go first again, but he said he's gone first for every single episode. So we don't want to have to make him go first for 3 episodes in a row.
Fuck you, Andrew.
And me going first, like sent us off the rails. So let's get a nice little rhythm.
Yeah,
and then we can focus on me.
Fuck you, Andrew. Tally is at 1. We're gonna save Bryce for last because he might be the best, and also because we don't want to have to record this for a 3rd time. So so let me go ahead and take it away.
You spoke too soon.
I knocked on wood again though. So I'm the oldest of 3 boys. I was born and have spent the majority of my life in Oakland County, Michigan, which for those of you who aren't familiar is one of the wealthiest counties, I believe, or at least it used to be per capita in the United States. So grew up in a predominantly white, predominantly uncomfortably conservative area, looking back at things now. And that really shaped who I was growing up. My parents were conservative. And, as you grow up, you kind of follow in the footsteps of those you admire, and you believe and think and say things to kind of mimic that. And it really, for me, was turning 18. That's when I started working in restaurants. I started at Olive Garden, which is where I actually spent 10 years with Darden Restaurants, serving, bartending, managing. But
I don't know. My Wi-Fi just all of a sudden was like, no, you don't have Wi-Fi anymore. And then it jumped back like right away. So my apologies on that.
No, you're good. So I'm just going to talk my way into what I was talking about, and I will technical difficulty mash this together later on. But The time I had spent in restaurants with not only the people I worked with, but the people that would come in and the people that I would serve and wait on. It was such a diverse group of people, and to get to hear stories and see people from so many different backgrounds. And I think at the time when I was 18 or 19, I wanted to go to school to be a high school teacher. And over the course of that first year and a half in the restaurant, I saw 5 or 6 people with their teaching degree waiting tables with me. So at that point, the gears started turning of, do I want to be the 7th person with their teaching degree who's a bartender or a server at Olive Garden? So I said no. And really, at that point, I think I was 19, maybe 20. My buddy Mark, who was the best man at his wedding in February, had his roommate up in Mount Pleasant at Central Michigan back out at the last minute. So joined him up there, lived on my own for the first time. Thankfully never got an MIP before I turned 21, which for, if you have some of my friends, I was the lucky one
How is that possible?
up there. And it was not for a lack of running into the Mount Pleasant Police Department, because that happened at least 3 or 4 times. But I think for me, it was like getting out of that bubble. You think that the world is like where you live. It's just a bigger version of that. And getting outside of that and seeing and hearing so many stories, I think that's where my brain, like the funny thing is my dad, who was very conservative, very stubborn, very set in his own ways. I know that sounds nothing like me. The conservative part, it doesn't, but the other stuff, maybe a bit. But he always taught me to ask questions. If something doesn't make sense, ask why. Why does this, why is this way? Why do people think this way? And it's funny that him telling me that is what made me kind of unpack and move away from that mindset, from the Republican conservative, which I think we've seen in the last 15, 20 years has only gone farther and farther right into extremism. So from there, met my my now ex-wife up there, and moved back home after about a year. After that, I was not quite 22, so I spent almost 2 years up in Mount Pleasant, and then was 22 with my oldest, and now have 3 boys. I can't believe my oldest is 13 years old, which is wild, but they'll be 13, 11, and 9 this year.
Well, that's because you're old, Andrew.
If I'm old, you are ancient, but we'll continue. I think I firmly believe that I am the reason that my friends didn't have kids earlier. They waited till a much later age, and now I get to see all their adorable kids. But going through that, and then I was within the same 6-month time frame, I lost my dad, and my marriage was over. So that was kind of a slap in the face of like, hey, you need to get your shit together. And it took me a while, and I made a whole lot of mistakes, and drank a bottle of red wine most every night to go to sleep and just to kind of numb a lot of those feelings. And that was when I was I thought I wasn't crazy, so I didn't need therapy. That was before therapy was really a thing. So in meeting some of the most amazing people in my life since then, and in going to therapy, and in trying to actively work on all these things. And that's the biggest thing, that if I could tell myself 15 years ago, like, you have to work on this stuff every day. As smart as I mean, I still think I'm very smart, but as smart as I thought I was at 20, and fuck you, Aaron. There's one right back. As smart as I thought I was then, and how I knew everything, which I think every 18 or 19-year-old kind of has that streak in them. Yeah, I'd love to just take him by the shoulders and shake him and say, you have no fucking idea what you're doing. And you're still not going to in a decade, but you have to work at it. And, whether it's parenting for me, whether it's romantic relationships, whether it's just like friendships, there's so much, and then we talk about the things like internalized racism, internalized misogyny, all these things that like I didn't even know about until I happened on this children's dancing app, and started finding all of these amazing creators who were able to explain a lot of these things that I had no idea about. And I think the beauty of what we've been able to kind of stumble into, like I'm so incredibly grateful not only to have just like downloaded this app and found a whole bunch of people who I genuinely feel like have taught me so much, but to be able to forge bonds with people who um, and close relationships with people who have taught me a lot of those things. I have the three of you guys, and again, like the story of Bryce and I sending messages back and forth and realizing we were a 6 minute drive away from each other. You guys who like, if we bump into each other at the grocery store, you're never going to give someone a second look, but like being able to, come across one another's content and start engaging. And, I can think of so many, so not so many other people, but like other than you three, like for me, I know Camille is one of those people, and it's like, um, just just looking back at this, and as cynical as I am and as much of an asshole as I can be,
Based.
every once in a while, I'll throw that caveat in there. I'm very thankful that this has kind of helped aid me in that process of, as I talked about, kind of trying to unlearn and unpack all of the things I was basically conditioned to believe and conditioned to understand as normal or the right way to do things. Uh, you three, all the people that put out amazing content on TikTok have kind of allowed me to do that. So, it's looking back on it now, that was I just kind of breezed over that there and got done a little bit quicker than I wanted to. But to sum that up, it's like the work isn't done. And it's not going to be done tomorrow. It won't be done in 6 months. It's not going to be done in 5 years. You know, we are like, I have, my kids are 13, 11, and 9, or will be, in about a month and a half now, when everyone's birthday is done. And like, my mission in life now is to make sure that they're far better than I was when they leave the house,
Right.
even before they leave the house. But when they're 18 and they're on their own, which I've already told them they'll be living on campus when they go to college, so I can just buy an RV and travel the country and golf. Um, but like,
He's like,
I
got those
want them,
long-term plans.
I want them to think for themselves. And like, I don't push anything on them. If they have questions, I will answer them. I don't If they have questions about religion, I will answer them to the best of my abilities. I will not try to persuade them or dissuade them one way or the other. And I think that's what I've really learned is, like, as a parent, you try to compensate or overcompensate in the areas you feel like you didn't get, or you try to course correct on things you can look back on and reflect and say, I wish I would have had this. Or I think it's like, you become the person, I've seen this on TikTok a bunch, you become the person now who you would have felt safe with as a child, which really hits you in the feels when you think about
Mm-hmm.
that. But I think, as someone who loves to talk, I'm more than happy to answer questions later on. But I think it's time for me to shut up. And
Oh my
I'm
God!
gonna
Thank
pass.
you for saying it. Just kidding, buddy.
Well,
Somebody had to.
I'm gonna pass it over to Pauly now, so we can give Aaron a breather for the next several minutes.
Yeah, until he goes on and then
Mm-hmm.
let the fun begin, right? So I was born in Sedona, Arizona, resort town out there. My mom had moved there with her family when
Did it look
she
like
was
this?
in her. No,
No.
no. Um, yeah, she had moved there. I think it was her junior year of high school with her family, which was a family of four. Well, four kids, the parents. And she met her husband, my dad at that time. They hit it off, got married, and then 6 months after finding out I was, that she was pregnant with me, he up and left. And yeah, so she had me, and luckily not all on her own. She had a good support system with my grandparents, and her sister and brothers were a little out there, but she had to decide because my grandparents had decided they wanted to move to Las Vegas, and she decided, she was like, do I move to Las Vegas with my parents, raise my son there, or do I go back to Indiana where our roots are, where my aunt is, and start over there? And she decided on the latter, to move to Indiana, which, good or bad, like looking at my uncle, it seems like the right choice because he was, still is, way far gone as far as drugs and partying and everything, though like Vegas won't necessarily do that to you, but it doesn't help. So yeah, grew up in Indiana, which was, I mean, it's Indiana. We were in the middle of cornfields, like literally next to, 4 farms, and then there was my aunt's house. So it was very much a rural area, and stayed in school there until 2nd grade. And then my mom got remarried, and we moved to more of a suburb of Indianapolis. Still pretty small town at the time. Now it's exploded, but yeah, moved there and went to school there. It was a great school system. Like, I hated the place, but like I would definitely have my kids grow up there because schooling was amazing. Like, the people sucked, but schooling was amazing. Um
People
so
just tend to
yeah,
suck. I mean, that's kind of what people do. They suck.
that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's a minority, sometimes it's a majority. This was definitely a majority issue. But I played, all the sports back then when I was, in elementary school and everything. And then my stepdad was, come to find out, he was a raging alcoholic, and a verbally and physically abusive one. More physically towards me than my mom, but I had kept it hidden from my mom. Like, he always did it when she wasn't around. Didn't tell her until years later after they had divorced, and she wanted to rip his head off then. But uh, just a small little snippet of that, which kind of brought me into my depressed gothic stage, which, some kids have, some don't, but it definitely hit me.
Was there any
And
mascara?
which,
Was there any mascara?
no mascara except for concerts. We would go to concerts and we would,
Okay.
put on the mascara for that, but not at school.
So special occasions, got it.
Yeah, special occasion mascara. I was the only boy to get in trouble for painting his nails in class, because the black nails needed painted. So there was that part.
You beta.
But it's funny because I got along with everyone because I did sports up until like, 7th, 8th grade. And then all of a sudden I was wearing the big baggy Jinko jeans and then a football jersey, of like Mike Allstott from the Buccaneers. Like, so they're like, what the fuck are you? I was like, I'm me. I'm fucking comfortable. What are you? Like,
Do we pick on this kid? Do we
I
pick on him or no? Is he cool? Like,
wasn't he our pitcher like back in elementary school? It's like, yeah, like he was the pitcher.
he had an arm on him. I mean,
So yeah. So yeah, it was an interesting time. Definitely had those, that bullied me just because of that, the way I looked, but that's just any schooling. Like, they'll find a reason to pick on you. Met my brother from another mother. Being an only child, it was kind of a necessity. He came from Chicago, and right away was an outcast because he was a black kid in a majority white town. I think he was one of like 4 black kids when he first came into the school. So it was rough there. And like, I went over to him and was like, dude, I got the new Crazy Bone album. You want to listen to it? And like, right away we just connected because it's just like, I was always into an eclectic type of music, anything from the death metal to hip hop to country to, anything and everything. So yeah, we became inseparable, like always hanging out. I would take him to work, and if he was running late or anything. But after high school, it was kind of just a bit lost, like odd jobs, things like that. Just, music was always like an important thing, like was always listening to music, but just didn't know how to make that into a career. So just kind of went to concerts, all that. I remember one year we saw, I think, 400 bands because of festivals and stuff we went to. Like, we ended up seeing 400 bands in one summer because we just went to every show we could possibly go to. Didn't like them all, but we saw 400 bands.
Wow.
And you get the Ozfest, you get the, Lollapalooza stuff, you get all kinds of things. Like, you can rack it up pretty quick.
That sounds like a job.
Yeah. When you're 18, 19, it's not. When you
Listen.
can't drink legally, and so you just get up and go again because you can't buy alcohol, like you're good to go.
That's amazing. I used to know
But
a bunch
yeah,
of kids that used to do
so
that
just
sort of thing, touring with bands and stuff like that. Oh my God, Fish.
it's
Like
crazy.
like 40 shows in like 46 days or some shit like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's
But
wild.
yeah, so after that, like I was working at this manufacturing plant that was doing the outsides of buildings and was just sick of it. Like I couldn't stand doing it. Like I wasn't happy at all. And like went home, told my mom, I was like, I have to get out of this fucking town. I have to get out of this state. Like I'm done. Like I can't do it anymore. And so she was like, all right, what do you want to do? I was like, well, there's a recording school in Minneapolis. Like, you know, I've always thought of Minneapolis as a great place. Like, it seems very much more forward motion than backwards, as most of Indiana is. So yeah, I, you know, took the chance. I went to work the next day and told my boss, I was like, Joe, I'm sorry, I quit. And he's like, what do you mean you quit? And like, he was a dick anyways. And he had just had hip surgery. So I just told him I quit and then walked out, but he couldn't chase me because he just got back from having hip surgery. So it's just like, deuces, I'm gone. And then I think it was 2 months later, I moved to Minneapolis and started at a recording school up here and just fell in love with the city, fell in love with the state. Like there was always something going on, especially during the summer, even during the winter, they find a way to make it happen. Um, and the professors there, like a lot of them, you know, worked in Minneapolis, which is a big recording town, which I didn't know. A lot of people probably don't know, but like Prince, obviously, but like some of them had worked on Michael Jackson album, Janet Jackson albums, like as the head producers and stuff like that, and was just even though I haven't gone into the music career, like that knowledge that I got and those stories that I was told made the school worth it. Like, I have the degree, but realized very quickly after that it's more who you know than what you know when it comes to the recording industry.
Mhm.
And you could have all the talent in the world. If you don't have people that'll support you, you're not going to get anywhere. Like it's just that simple, especially as someone behind the scenes versus, you know, if you're a good guitarist, you'll get noticed eventually. If you're a good producer and no one takes you seriously, no one takes your, you know, takes the demos that you give them, they don't care.
Yeah, the movie industry is the same
But
way.
I
You know?
just, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like
Yep.
there's some great scripts out there that they'll just never be seen
Mhm.
because no one knows who the fuck they are. Uh, so yeah, after school, I moved back to Indiana for about 6 months, found a job at CVS, and was just like, all right, what am I gonna do? And you know, was just I can't do this anymore. Again, like I'm back in the same place that I tried to get away from. And so I was talking to one of my buddies, like good friends. I was like, you tired of Indiana? He's like, yeah. I was like, you want to come to Minneapolis? Like, I know some people. Like, he's like, sure. So they like found an apartment online. Didn't even go look at it, obviously, because we were in Indiana. It was just like $800 a month in downtown Minneapolis, basically. Like, sold.
Yeah.
Like,
Holy
we can
cow.
both pay $400 a month for rent. And so walked in. One of the rooms is super tiny, one's huge. And we're just like, all right, we'll switch off every couple months on who gets the big room because one is definitely like the child's room, the other one's the master room. But yeah, moved back and stayed here ever since. Never looked back. That friend's come and gone. He's in Florida now for a job. And then just kind of still worked odd jobs. I got into the hotel industry, which you know I thought was a good career path. Luckily, didn't stick with it because COVID happened and all hell broke loose when it came to that. Ended up finding a job at a law firm because of someone I knew that was working at the hotel part time, and thought that was going to be the career because I was in facilities and it was the biggest law firm in Minnesota. But I was like fourth in line. Like I could see the direction, the you know the stairway to being at the top of it was learning new stuff. And then COVID hit, and they just didn't have enough to do because everyone was working from home. And facilities work, you kind of need people there to do the
Mhm.
facility stuff. Like that's how it works. So I got furloughed for about a year until they finally let me go. Um, so that's the job path that I was on, and then now work where I do. But outside of that, I, you know, obviously met Roxy. There, that kind of came out of nowhere. I was never big on dating or anything, and yeah, I was just did the Tinder thing. It was, you know, swiping left and right, and all of a sudden we matched, and she was one of the few that actually wanted to meet up right away instead of just talking forever and then not actually going to like actually go on a date, like, which both sexes and, whoever it may be are guilty of just like, oh no, let's just keep talking. It's like, no, like, let's see if we actually are a good match in person. Like, I get the scariness of meeting somebody. That's why you always do it, in a bar or restaurant or anywhere that's in public. But yeah, so we hit it off right away. I knew it, I think, way before she did, that I was just like, I love this woman. Like, I want to be with this woman. That's all there is to it. So yeah, I met her, fell madly in love, and it was a year and a half later, she got pregnant with our first child. I had asked her to marry me before that, and we had booked our wedding for about the time that our first child was due. So we were like, all right, let's postpone the wedding. Kid's gonna come, dress won't look good. I get it. And then we ended up getting married in Duluth like a month after that, and then she was pregnant with our second, and then our third. But she's made me such a better man. Like, I was terrified of having kids, just not having that father figure in my life. So I knew that, if anything, she was going to help me with that. And, we both had troubling backstories when it came to our childhoods anyways. And as you said, like, Andrew, we want to do better than our parents did for us. Like, you always want to be better than what your parents were. Even if you had the greatest parents, you still want to one up them. So, it's in our head that we're going to never say no to our kids unless it's something that's going to kill them or something like that. Like, let them explore and do what they want to do. If it's religion that they want to learn about, like, let them do it. But we're not going to push anything on them, like, be it religion or Pearl Jam. I will not push it. I'll just have them listen to it.
Mango Pepsi as well, please.
Yeah, leave them.
You can say no to that.
Yeah.
Keeps turning on Soundgarden, being like, oh yeah, that's Pearl Jam. Go for it.
Yeah, it's good stuff. It's good. Listen to it.
How long have you and Roxy?
But yeah, and then that brings me.
Sorry, I was just going to ask, how long have you and Roxy been together?
It was actually 5 years a couple days ago.
Oh,
congratulations!
It was the first time.
Happy anniversary.
Yeah. So
I would just like to know to both you and Roxy, I said congratulations before either Bryce or Aaron did.
Fuck you, Andrew.
No, you didn't.
So
you
5 years together.
But you didn't say congratulations. You said like.
I just did. I just said
no, but I had beat you to it at that point. I already said congratulations.
No, I already said it. I
just,
said it first.
Just say.
I'm going to be the one editing the clip. By the way. Oh, that's 3 then. So Aaron's finally broken his record. We're at 3. How exciting!
Thank you, Aaron, for the congratulations.
It's going to be an interesting edit this week, boys.
I'm gonna be on TikTok being like, that is not what I said. That is not what I said.
Right. That's not what I said at all. I don't know where those words came from.
And not when I said it either.
I will edit this to where it sounds like Pauly is saying he fell madly in love with Mango Pepsi after the first time he tried it. That
nice.
And it'd still be true. It would still be true.
There's something wrong with
your editing skills have just skyrocketed in the last week. If you can do that, I'm looking forward to it.
Well, to be fair, the bar was at 0 2 weeks ago.
It's true.
I'm any sort of success kind of guy,
We're getting there. We're making progress.
Yep.
But yeah, Pauly, I think like just in seeing and hearing you talk about the kids, and it's clear that your passion, or one of your passions in life, is giving those kids the experience that you feel like you didn't have. So I think from an outsider's perspective, and as someone who has kids myself, and questioning my abilities every day,
right,
it feels like you do a fantastic job.
Yeah, Pauly's super dad.
Just being there, you do a tremendous job from everything we see. So
I try. There's definitely moments where I'm like, man, like, I could have done better, but I think we all just have that as parents, where it's just like, I should have done something different there.
Well, welcome to being insecure. I say that after everything I do. I make toast and I'm like, I could have done that better. Like, right now I'm like, I know one of these lights is not the right color. It needs to be brighter. I could have done that better.
Oh man.
Okay,
all
Andrew.
Right, we ready?
Let's do your little jokey joke.
Okay, perfect. So after another little technical difficulty that actually wasn't Aaron's fault again, um, I wanted
It's
to
a
really
goddamn
set.
shame.
I wanted to paint a picture for not only our audience just listening, but also our audience on YouTube. So I think it's important for everyone to really understand Aaron fully. You listen to the introduction here. So Aaron's about to break in with his story, but before he does, the Dust Bowl, also known as the Dirty 30s, started in 1930 and lasted for about a decade, but its long term economic impacts on the region lingered much longer. Severe drought hit the Midwest and the Southern Great Plains in 1930. Massive dust storms began in 1931. Okay, you can go now.
Stop giving Andrew microphones. Fuck you, Andrew.
There you go. We got another one. Nice. That was number 4.
My stomach hurts from laughing so hard. That was number 4. Whew.
Breaking records today, boys. So yeah, it's funny hearing you guys' stories. As different backgrounds as we come from, there's so many similarities that it's not as surprising that we've come together, the 4 of us. So I was born to a young mother and father, 16 and 17. They ended up in a blended family because they never got married, and which rightly shouldn't have. So I was pretty much raised in the first 5 years of more than that, but basically raised more by my grandparents just because, super young parents need help from their parents. Mom had me, and then she finished high school, then she went off to college to become an LPN. And then my dad, he was kind of a troublemaker and ended up going into the Navy for 6 years. He did 2 world tours on 2 aircraft carriers.
Oh, wow.
And then my mom met my stepdad, who technically adopted me. But I have always been close with all of my family, whether it be biological or step. So it's a great thing. I have a huge family. But I was raised a lot by my grandpa, which is why I'm country boy farmer. Started driving, doing field work in a big tractor when I was in 6th grade, actually doing work. Yeah. And then, so he was diagnosed with lupus in 1983 or 4. I think it was 84 and passed away at the age of 57, and I would have been like 13 or 14. I was freshman in high school, so that was like losing my dad at a very young age, which sucked. But after that, I got way closer with my stepdad and my biological dad, because my biological dad, he was stationed out in San Diego for a lot of years of my life until 89, and then they moved home. And then that year they moved out onto his wife's family farm, where they had a dairy, and where my little brother, who was 5 at the time, was screwing around on the automatic cattle feeder and got pulled into it and got killed. So yeah, lots of fun times when I was young. But it makes you stronger. But so I'm the only one between my 2 parents. I have hang on, now I got to count. I got 3 brothers and a sister on my dad's side, including my brother that died, and then on my mom's side I have 2 brothers, all younger than me. And none of my brothers and sisters are real close in age. They span from anywhere of 3 years younger than me to 12 years younger than me, my youngest brother. So, wasn't really ever super close with siblings growing up. I was kind of more only child. We going somewhere on a train, or?
Yeah.
I think that's me.
Oh,
That's
nice.
you.
I mean,
Yeah. Right.
it's not my train, but it's in the background. Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna say I was thinking it was me at first because I am in Ferndale and then it goes right through on this side, but you're
Well,
definitely closer
we
to
have
you.
Aaron talking about his country boy
I know the
energy
train.
going
I
up.
was
So
like,
I figured perfect time with the train going by in the background.
I
Yeah,
thought he had like an
nice.
effect button or something. He was hitting it like every time, like on the radio shows, you know.
So
And
yeah,
we have a
of Nebraska.
we have a guest host, so I will keep it muted while she's here, but
hey
she is
Beans.
part of it now.
Hey, Beans.
So yeah. Anyway, I was had to grow up fast, and I've grown up, and I still am in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, Nebraska. Hashtag BFNN. Um, Small towns. The town I live in now is the town that I grew up in, which is only 300 and some people now. For a time, I got married when I was 24, and my wife and I lived in a town of 69 people, where I was the chairman of the town board and fire chief, and dog catcher and
Weren't
police
you the
chief.
mayor also, or did we just make that up?
Chairman
I
of
thought you
the
said you were the mayor.
chairman of the town board is technically mayor.
No, Frank Sinatra is the chairman of the board.
Okay, well, I'm just as important as Frank Sinatra, Andrew. So just start throwing some respect on my name.
Just because your eyes are as blue as his doesn't mean you're as important.
So if
Yeah, I
Frank
actually hadn't
Sinatra
made
was
that
old,
equation.
if Frank Sinatra was old blue eyes, does that make Aaron really old blue eyes?
Fuck you, Andrew.
Nailed
That's
it.
we're halfway to double digits now, folks.
Ooh.
That's number 5 on the
Ooh, doggy.
But before this
Mortgage,
gets stretched out too long, my life was fairly basically simple. My family was always quote unquote Democrats, but still not liberals.
Yeah.
The same story
There's
as
a
everybody
difference.
else. As I got into college, I went to college at a technical school. I went for a year for electronic technician, which I had dreams of going then to get my bachelor's in electronic engineering. And one day we took a field trip up to a place where just to see what our jobs would be like, and there's all these poor bastards just sitting in cubicles soldering circuit boards. I'm like, no, I can't do this. So the next year I switched my major to diesel mechanics, got my associates in that, worked at a tractor dealership for a couple of years. Hated sitting in the shop all day. When I was young, I wanted to farm, so I went to work for this large corporate farm. I was there for 12 years, moved to South Dakota, became a truck driver.
Just like all the Midwest things.
Yes,
Just like
all of the Midwest
all the
things.
Midwest things.
While in South Dakota, I did get my namesake, which is Aaron Nine Toes. I was in a accident where a attachment on a skid steer fell and crushed both my lower legs.
Ugh.
And I was in a wheelchair.
I've heard
for
it
3
so
months.
many times, but every time it just
Every single time.
Yeah.
It never gets easier to hear. Like I knew he was about to say it, and I was like,
well, the worst part is he watched Friends all the way through twice.
Hey, I watched that stupid.
That's the worst part of the
I
whole
watched
story.
that stupid New Girl show too, all the way through while I was sitting in the wheelchair. So,
well,
your favorite show?
wait, so you two actually have something in common?
Yeah, but I watched it and still thought it was mediocre. He thinks it's the greatest show in the world.
Well, Aaron has a kale salad for breakfast and calls himself cultured, so we don't need to do this right here. We'll let Aaron continue.
Toss up there.
So yeah, I went through my accident and then ended up getting divorced 6 months after my accident. So that was fun. Stayed in South Dakota for a couple. Yeah. All that fun stuff just tends to hit at the exact same time. But then, so I mentioned my grandpa had lupus. My mom has MS, which is starting to deteriorate her. And then my biological father was diagnosed with really, really bad Parkinson's. And so then it was time to move home. I got a job at my cousin's company, which is a family-owned company, trucking company, and that's where I'm at now. And right after my divorce is when the pandemic hit, and I found the Kids Dancing app, and I found you guys, and here we all are. Oh, and to show everybody proof,
Scene.
I'm actually missing a toe.
He's been
If you want to
sitting there
see
with
the
one
missing
sock on the
toe,
whole
you have to
time.
go to YouTube, by the way.
Yes, yes. Go.
No, it's Pauly. It's actually on OnlyFans. So,
Ooh, I should start one of those. But yeah, that's
dude,
that's...
like, don't throw it out the window. Like, you might be kidding right now, but like, I promise you, there is
there's
got to be. There's enough people that have like some sort of like weird toe kink, and you are definitely Aaron Weird Toes. So
yeah.
let's
Imagine how much you could sell your socks for.
Oh God.
the socks that the toe hasn't been in.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna stop throwing those away. But with that, that's basically my life story. As far as like being conservative as a young kid and just growing and learning, especially because of the app, my story's just gonna pretty much mirror everybody else's story, like especially Andrew's story, where I was very conservative, and now at 42 years old, you're learning about internalized misogyny and racism. And I think I said it on the first podcast, is it just learning how to deal with it and not want to push back on it it's work, and it sucks, but I'm better because of it. So, and with that,
one of the only good.
We're
still learning this dance, Bryce.
Yeah,
I know. 1, 2, 3, 4.
It's like double dutch. You just
a long time ago, back in the 70s, on the mountain of Lookout, a baby boy was born.
Is that the right? Is that the right?
His name was Bryce, and then you do it. you got to hit like the damn of the story, you know.
I should have had Rocky Top queued up for that.
Oh Jesus! I have my guitars right here. Don't do that. I'll start playing along. So I'm not going to be as me as I was yesterday when we tried this. I'm gonna like kind of condense it a little bit so I don't see.
We're still
like
gonna put that
an
out.
hour.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
well, I mean,
it's me, so good. So, but like, yeah. So I'm just gonna go with like my upbringing, like skip the whole like, holy fuck, where did you come from? Sort of part of the story. I grew up in what Aaron was essentially, or I'm sorry, Andrew was essentially talking about, like a relatively. I mean, it was pretty rich. It's Grosse Pointe Farm, so like the city is in itself is like one of the richest, if not in the state, in the country. Like, and everything was just hunky dory. You know, like I was a white kid, and there was some ethnicities other than white kid, but there were a lot of white kids. I think I graduated with 5 black people and like 3 or 4 people of Indian descent. But my parents, I told my mom this, and she got really, really she got like hurt by it. And I was like, no, Mom, this is a good thing. Like, I didn't understand like racism was a thing, or like that, like or that, like other people looked down on other races, or like when you say I don't see race, like I actually didn't see race when I was like very, very, very young, up until I was like 11 or 12. And then I started noticing things people said as we like as a whole got smarter, you know. 6th grade, 12th, 6th grade, 7th grade, you start to become a little bit more aware of your surroundings. You know, you go to a public school for the first time, because I was in private school up until then. So like my mom and dad had friends, Fairs, which was a black family, and Ricky and what was his name, Michael, were like the same age as me and my brother, so we'd go over there and sleep over, and it wasn't weird at all. But like the one thing I wish she had told me, at least when I started becoming aware of it, maybe even before then, just to kind of plant the seed, was to be like, listen, Bryce, just because we're accepting of other people and we don't tend to see color, as people say, you know, there are other people who definitely do. And my parents never warned me about that. They were great. They were great people, extraordinarily, I would say leftists back in the day even, you know, but they never told me that the other side existed. So I really noticed it until like I had a friend who turned into like one of my best friends for a long time, who always tossed out the N-word. And like I was kind of insecure, but I had a best friend. You know, I was like, I didn't like, oh, you shouldn't say that. You know, like I think I was saying that initially, and then eventually I just gave up. And I mean, I had like my own racist moments that I don't, you know, that I don't realize were racist until like yesterday when I was about to go to sleep, and I was like, ah. I said that thing, you know, like you just wake up like with an old memory of something you
Yeah,
did or said, and then
absolutely.
you're up for the rest of
Mhm.
the freaking night. Oh my god. So, anyways, um, it wasn't until like it wasn't until uh I would say even after my transplant that I really started to notice what people actually thought, you know. And I think that like that's just white privilege beyond white privilege. It's a white boy growing up in a fairly white neighborhood who never sees
Mm-hmm.
uh, who never sees the actuality of what racism does. He'll hear it from kids and just whatever and blow it off, and I'm not going to hang out with them. But then, you know, you actually when like I got on this app or even before that actually, but like I started paying attention to things, I started noticing that that racism isn't just what people think or say or and do behind closed doors. It affects the entirety of the country, of the world, whatever the case may be. You know,
Mhm.
it will it will dominate the entire structure of a system. And as we've seen over the last like 4 or 5 years of us doing this sort of thing on here on TikTok, or 3 or 4 years, I say, it's obvious that that's true. And I feel terrible that like I never paid
Mm-hmm.
attention to it the way I do now. So that's why I'm like adamant about it. I'm, you know,
Well, it's to interrupt for a second. It's
yeah,
not even that you didn't pay attention to it. It's that these were things that we were led to believe or raised to believe these are part of life, or this is how things are, because we're coming from the place of being beneficiaries of those things. We're not the
Mm-hmm.
ones who are on the short end of that straw, or the ones being oppressed by it or marginalized by it. So to be able to have those things explained to you, and I think that's why the people who struggle with understanding things that we've been able to make headway with in terms of just like internalized racism, internalized misogyny, is like the lens. If your lens is your life in your small town or big town, but if it's all white people and
Mm-hmm.
everyone's well off and no one has these issues and no one struggles, your whole experience is that life is good. Why is anyone worried about homeless people? Where I live, there's no homeless people. There's nothing to worry about.
I'm not
But
homeless. It's okay. I'm
Right.
good. You know?
life is not your street corner.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's so much more than that, and I think that's why this app specifically has been great for so many people.
Mm-hmm.
But
I think it's why
yeah,
so many of us like yell like empathy too all the time because like that's an unempathetic sort of way to feel. Like I'm fine. What's the problem?
Right.
You know, and then you clearly don't give a flying fuck about
Well,
anybody else. And
you said you were talking about, I don't see color, and that's something I lived by for a while, and then until I figured out, hearing people from marginalized groups and saying, well, if you don't see color, that's kind of shitty too, because then you're not seeing the
yeah,
problems, and that that was a real eye opener.
that's almost exactly the problem. You know, and from where I came from was that like. And like I said, I was telling my mom, and she was like, "Well, no, we raised you right." I was like, "Mom, no, you did raise me well. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you taught me to be kind and all these things, but you didn't tell me that other people weren't like that." And I
right.
was like, "What? People are mean? Oh no! Come on!" You know, like
Mm-hmm.
it like blew me away. I couldn't
Mm-hmm.
believe it. You know, I thought everybody was just like nice, but apparently nobody's
Jokes on
fucking
you.
nice. Yeah,
Jokes on
right.
you.
It
You
was
know.
so much better living in that cocoon. I can tell you that. Like, not because of the white privilege, but because like I didn't have to realize that like people were terrible, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And not realizing people are terrible is privilege, but like it was also extraordinarily calming,
Mm-hmm.
you know? Never any like those internalized racism issues that we face these days. You don't feel those back then. I remember what it was to like not feel that way. You
Right.
know, now
But
every
that's
day I
also
wait.
part of the thing. That's part of the thing, like you were explaining. Like we we as looking like we did when we grew up, or like you having your friend who was black that you and your brother would go hang out with him and his brother, you got to you got to feel that calm, whereas him and his brother probably didn't get to feel that. So like that's where like you called out earlier, it's just you grew up not knowing because your parents raised you in a loving household where you were taught, to care for everybody, to appreciate everybody. And unfortunately, as you pointed out, most people are not that way.
Like I've actually thought about this, but like there could have been like an overall sense of like when me and my brother were taken to this house that the fairs and his dad was great. He died a few years ago, and his mom was great, and the kids were great. But like there was probably something in the back of their head like these are white people, okay? It's like this family could easily just go nuts and and let the racism flow. I mean,
Well,
they,
that
they
was the
probably
thing with
had to
my.
be. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that was the thing with my friend that ended up being like a brother to me is like his mom never really trusted me that much. Like she was like, okay, he can take you to work or whatever, but she was always like on edge until one time when I think his brother and sister were locked out while we were out somewhere else, and like or no, they were in a car accident and she was at work. She worked in Chicago sometimes, and like I booked it with them to go get them, like to get make sure they were safe and okay, and brought them home and everything. And like from that moment on, she realized like it's the thing. Like she even said it to me. She's like, "You're one of the good ones," and she meant as a white person, like that
Yeah,
Hmm.
of course.
I
Yeah,
was treating his family like my family, like I wasn't having some ulterior motive. It was just like, oh, my best friend needs help. I got to go do it. And it's like, looking back, knowing how on edge she was until that moment, like made me think. Because back then I was just like, oh, your mom just doesn't like me. And now thinking about it, it's like, no, she
yeah,
was cautious of me because she didn't
Right.
know exactly who I was. She just knew that I could be very dangerous to her son because of my whiteness.
whiteness.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. It's crazy like that. I mean, like back in that day, you're thinking, oh, she just doesn't like me or whatever. But like, and she probably had nothing against you, like personally. Like she probably thought you were a polite person, and you were nice to her son. So, but she was always like back of the head. I have to be, I have to be cautious. So,
Yeah.
so moving past this extraordinarily deep conversation that I walked us into, holy shit. Okay, okay. So after high school, no. So I've been a musician most of my life, and I told the story the other day, but like when I was 11, MTV Top 10, they were premiering "You Could Be Mine," Guns N' Roses. I had only seen the "Welcome to the Jungle" video. Was a little like, what's that? Oh my god! Like, there's people all over the place. And that guy's not wearing a shirt. Where's that guy's face? And like, and then I saw the "You Could Be Mine" video slash with the BC Rich and just on stage and fucking balloons and like they had blacked out like the few women who were like, yeah, I'm at a rock concert, and I was like, wow, I must be going through puberty because that is awesome. And I I started obsessing about Guns N' Roses and left my Vanilla Ice, and CNC Music Factory behind, in the past.
What could have been? What
But
could have been?
I know,
Hmm.
right? And the funny part is that
Vanilla
like
Bryce. How did I not say that yesterday? We missed
I've
out on
I've,
Vanilla
I've
Bryce.
actually
Oh
I
my
was
God.
actually
100%.
wondering how that never happened because people used to call me that all the time, or they'd be like, "Hey, Bryce, Bryce, baby," or like
Andrew's
or
disappointed in himself that he didn't think of that one.
I'm
uh,
so. I'm
like
gonna be
the
thinking
one
about that later.
the one I used to get in grade school all the time was Bryce Aroni, the San Francisco treat. So
That's
like,
even low for me.
You
I,
could have
I
been in
need more
cahoots with
I
Kid
education.
well,
Rock back in the day.
we I mean, we were 6 years old, so let's not like be down in the creativity of a first grader.
Oh,
But where was I? So yeah, I started playing music, and but like right when I started getting good at guitar, like a couple years after I started playing in like was it sixth grade or seventh grade? I'm not sure. It's one of the two, but uh, just like what Polly said, what could have been. I was kind of on either side of the fence because I started in a choir that was psychotic. Like, I mean, it was like 7 or 8 shows a year, and we would rehearse from 3 to 10 every day after school, and 9 to 6 Saturdays and Sundays for 3 weeks before every single show.
You sound like a Russian gymnast before
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
Olympics.
exactly. Like, and like, I never took any dancing lessons or anything, but I was always the number one in front, middle of the stage, tap dancing and doing all that shit. So like, it very well could have been like
Vanilla
ski
Bryce.
music, Vanilla Bryce,
Vanilla Bryce.
yeah. But yeah, no, the choir was amazing. I played guitar at the same time and took theory classes and everything like that. So like, I'm not trained as a guitar player at all. Like I took like 2 or 3 lessons and then just started learning on my own. But I'm extraordinarily trained as like a dancer for a professional choreographer and voice lessons and everything like that for uh, just singing bass. And I in case any alphas out there want to question me, I did have the lowest voice in the entire state of Michigan for 4 years. So
Is it true? Is it true that you choreographed Aaron's twerking video that premiered on TikTok
That's what I
about
heard.
2 years ago?
nope, don't tell him, Aaron. Don't tell him.
Fuck you, Andrew.
No,
That video never happened.
6.
Yes.
6 times we've heard it today.
You're killing it. Okay, we're already up over 100% approval rate.
All right,
But
so
yeah.
after you choreographed Aaron in the Zubaz pants, what came after that?
Well, then I started making those pants because I'm just kidding. I started. Me and my best friend were going to go to college for music theory because I didn't want to like go for guitar because I was like, I want to keep my own style, man. And which in hindsight was a terrible idea. I should have just like gone and learned what I could have at school for guitar and then just applied what I do to that. But here we are. And like me and his name was Nads. He was called Nads up until a few years ago. That's a story for another time, obviously. Um, we dropped out after like one semester. We were like, and I did because I went to be a music theory major, and I wasn't allowed to major in theory my freshman year, and nobody ever told me that. I didn't read it anywhere, anything like that. So I was like, are you telling me that I have to like sit through theory 101, like stuff I did when I was 14 years old for a year? And he was like, yeah, what's the problem?
Yeah, and you're gonna have to pay money to do that as well.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I went home, filled out the entire test book, and returned it the next day, and then didn't show up to class again. So, yeah. I mean, I aced the entire book. I just like flew through it, but he could only give me an A- because of my attendance.
Oh,
That's a great idea in theory.
God damn it.
I see Aaron's in
I'll take
pain.
one.
He's like, I saw that coming. Fuck. So after that, everything like it was just music and bartending. You know, it's been like that pretty much. You know, there was a few years there in the middle where I was doing other things. But yeah,
Exchanging
it was just,
hearts. Exchanging
yeah.
hearts.
Yeah.
I'll save that part for another episode because I have a funny feeling that we are going to need content as we go on. So like let's try to spread things out a little bit. We'll be like things you didn't know about us, part 2. Like, but yeah, no, it's really has just been like music bartending. Like every time I join a band, especially in my like 20s when like I didn't need anything besides my boots. I would just like sleep at people's houses or sleep at my parents' house when they were out of town because they worked on movies. And then I'd go on tour and then I'd come back and maybe my grandmother was at home. So I would take care of her for a while when my parents were on location. And then I'd go back on tour. And I was like the true definition of like a vagabond for, I don't know, 8-9 years maybe. You know, and then I actually like I met a girl and like we started living together and I was bartending around the corner at the WAB where I am now. And then that other stuff. And now we're kind of
Yeah, just a detour for a little bit, you know.
Just bumps
I think
in the road.
I think he said he went to Joshua Tree to find himself. or
Yeah.
something along those lines.
Peyote was involved. I don't know.
I expect
Well,
everybody needs a vision quest. at one
and
time
Bryce,
or another.
you're in Detroit now, but you are moving back to California, correct?
I am. Yeah, I am moving back to California. Like my mother, my brother, and his wife live there. My nephew lives there. Um, I play poker and guitar and bartend for a living, and I can do that with much more success there.
Right.
And there's only like 2 or 3 casinos like in the Detroit area to like play poker at. So I'm never really dealing with A, the best of players, and B, the amount of players I want to be able to like maximize my gains. So, excuse me, I went all poker brain there for a second.
Hopefully, everybody keeps both hands on the table when you play from this point forward.
Yeah.
I would think at the Commerce Casino where there's like 250 tables that there's at least one.
Oh,
Yeah.
I hope not, for your sake.
I mean, you're talking about 2,000 people,
Yeah.
A boy can dream.
One guy's been there for 8 hours, and he's like,
Oh.
I didn't have my sleeve up the way I did the other day. I couldn't do it as well.
I think we all recall the what we're hinting at here.
Yes.
So.
Go back to the previous episodes for context.
Yeah, and not because we need the listens.
But we do.
Yeah, I mean, both. Play it through 2 or 3 times also while you're there.
Just leave it on and turn the volume off if you wouldn't mind. Thanks.
There's a fast mode so you can get through it quicker. It's fine. Just 2 times the audio.
Yeah.
There is?
Yep.
Is that a thing?
On YouTube,
have
Spotify,
you guys never
all that.
listened to podcasts?
Yes. You can speed
I
through
don't
that
really
shit.
listen to a ton of podcasts.
Yeah.
It's like taking a governor off the golf cart. We're going to be taking this thing 40 miles an hour here pretty soon.
Yeah. I'm just like the world's biggest hypocrite. Like, here I am in a podcast, and I don't listen to podcasts, like, at all. I'm like, yeah, but people want to listen to me. I mean, come on.
There's beans.
There's the beans. Is that meaning we're getting close to having to wrap this thing up?
No, she's just reaching out to me.
No, like like I said, I'm not going to go into like the rest of my nonsense because, as you can probably assume, there's tons of nonsense like here.
Well, and as far as your transplant goes, as far as your heart transplant goes, I mean, for everybody who doesn't know, yeah, Bryce did have a heart transplant, but I think that's an episode that we can have with, I went through my 3 months in wheelchair. That's
I didn't even mention my open heart surgery. I kind of breezed right through that.
Yeah.
See, we'll do a part 2 with like major injuries.
Yeah.
Major surgical things.
$1 million surgeries. We all have one of those.
Actually,
2.6 million.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy.
Some change.
Yeah.
The American medical system, hard at work.
Oh, God.
I can't believe my tax dollars paid for your surgery with that man bun.
I'm lib.
But with all of that,
beta lib cuck, right? That's the one.
BLC, yeah. BLC. Hashtag BLC.
With all of that, I think we have to mention our sponsor, Andrew, of course.
Yeah, so you heard it at the beginning of the episode. But it's The Ballad of Bonaduke by R.T. Slaywood, a dark urban fantasy. It's available exclusively on Kindle Vella. In the description on YouTube or wherever you're listening to the podcast, you'll have access to the link or in our link tree as well. So please check it out. From what I read, I really enjoyed it. But it looks like Beans is telling us it's time to wrap up. So I think Bryce should probably count us into that song there, and we should get it rolling.
1, 2, 3, 4.